Amen. If you wouldn't mind taking your seats, we're going to go ahead and get started with our last session of the day. A seat at her table, women, business, and politics. Amen, amen. So I am your moderator, Karlette Porter. I'm one of the board members for NAN Sacramento, and we want to welcome you to our final session on today. And again, we would like to welcome our panelists. Starting at my immediate left, we have Sister Lese Morrow. I just messed up her name. All right, Lese Morrow. She's pinching for Regina Brown-Wilson, who had to leave. But we thank God for her. She is publisher of Inland Valley News and the founder of the Carson Compass. Can you give her a hand? And then right next to her, we have Sister Betty Williams, who's the president of National African American Civil Rights Organization here in Sacramento. Give her a hand. And next to her, we have Sister Delilah Clay, who is a partner with Barros, Clay and Associates. We have some powerhouse women, amen. And then next to her, we have Sister Kendra Lewis, who is the chairwoman of the California Democratic Black Caucus. Amen. And last but not least, we have Sister Kouture, who is a NAN Western Regional Assistant Director. Let's give them all a hand for being with us on today. And we're going to get right into it. Again, our panel focus is Black Women, Power, Backlash, and the Fight Forward. As we all know, or maybe everyone doesn't know, but the most educated group of people on this planet is Black women. Black women have risen to historic levels of power, education, entrepreneurship, political leadership, and cultural influence. Yet under this current administration, Black women are also facing heightened attacks through media narratives, political backlash, and the rollback of DEI. How are you processing this moment? Anyone like to jump in? How are you processing this moment that we're in right now? Oh, can we have the mics on, please? It's on.
Hello? I immediately think about we shouldn't allow it to define us. And I also think about when we are looking at how it's pushing back, especially Black women, that we need to remember as Black women, we know how to pivot immediately. When you look at the Underground Railroad and our sister that took everyone without a single missed slave, we knew how to pivot. When you've seen the movie Hidden Figures, and the most powerful astronaut at the time, John Glenn, he wanted the Black women to make sure, or a Black woman to make sure she was in the room.
Right.
We knew how to pivot, even though IBM was coming in, we knew how to pivot. And so this is no different. We redefined, we empower, we know what to do as educated Black women. We know how to pivot.
Anyone else?
Yes, I just add, because I think that's exactly the point. I think right now we also have to learn how to sort of reinvest in ourselves. This is a new moment that we have to be thinking about community in new ways, thinking about withdrawing too from certain places and spaces that are no longer hospitable to us, and thinking about how we can partner with one another, work together, help to educate ourselves and focus on our own communities, because I think, there's a lot of things happening in our society right now that we don't have direct control over. I think that it's going to continue to sort of move in that direction for a while. But to Betty's point about pivoting, the more that we invest in ourselves, the more we'll be ready when the moment comes to be able to jump in and think about new ways of doing things.
Yes.
I would say for me, processing it, I have to say, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. So for me, it is not as overwhelming as it may be for some, just because I'm just not surprised. It has been going on as a student of history. There's certain things that just have, over the last 10, 20, 30 years, have manifested itself. I think we wanted to give credit for progress, and I think we have to acknowledge that. But my process is, this has really been the same space we've been in at the same time. And, we have a lot to gain by the progress, some to lose, but, knowing to pivot, we'll get to the next phase of things probably bigger and better than ever.
I think through this moment in pivoting that we lost sight of what the game was. We stopped making the main thing the main thing. And I think what this has done is this has reminded us how serious of a time we're in, the role and the responsibility that we have. I think we want the accoutrements that come with success, the imagery that come with success, the likes, the follows, the shares. But we don't want to carry the burden of the crown, and we don't want the responsibility that comes with leadership. And so I think what this did was to remind us, you know, what our role was and who we were supposed to be and what we were supposed to be leading, so that when we feel the urge to want to get off track or be regular, as some would say, or, fit in, that we be reminded that that was never the game plan. That was never their success, or what is deemed as successful should have never been our benchmark or our goal. And so this just puts us back in a space where we really let reality, set in and say, who are we and what are we supposed to be doing?
Amen, amen. This question is directly for Talise. As publisher of two publications, how has media coverage contributed to the targeting, misrepresentation, or erasure of Black women leaders, and what must Black media do in response?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me too, but that was a very loaded question, and I mean, to really even pick it apart and try to answer it, I'm gonna just do the best that I can. But from my perspective, we've seen media have this immense power over public perception, right? And historically, that power has not painted African American women in the best light, right? We're often talked about as being women that won't conflict, but they don't talk about our contribution, right? They talk about our tone, but they don't talk about our talent. They talk about our conflict, but not so much even our competence. And so we've seen Black women leaders scrutinized more aggressively and afforded opportunities less than, and forced to repeatedly prove our qualifications while other people can just assume that they have them, right? At the same time, African American women have just been erased altogether, their work minimized, their leadership overlooked, and their impact excluded from larger narratives. I believe Black media has a responsibility to do more than simply tell stories. We must preserve our truth, provide context, document our leadership, our humanity, and the brilliance of Black women. That means challenging the narratives that don't serve us, that do us harm. That means refusing to sensationalize attacks against Black women for attention and clicks, shares. Black women are to be reflected not only in the moments of struggle, but I believe in moments of innovation, in moments of leadership, in moments of policy ownership and legacy. As publishers, we also have to ask ourselves difficult and hard questions, right? About those voices we actually decide to amplify, whose expertise we validate, whether we're creating platforms where Black women are fully seen, heard, and respected. I believe Black media cannot just simply react to the attacks on Black women leaders after they happen. We must build ecosystems of visibility, credibility, and protection before those attacks ever come. So being more proactive instead of reactive, I think, is the responsibility of Black media.
I agree. Thank you so much. That's a great response. Amen. For Kendra, as chairwoman of the California Democratic Party Black Caucus, what does real political power for Black women look like right now, especially as DEI, voting rights, representation, and access are being challenged?
What does it look like? Well, the last 2 to 3 weeks have been just pretty, just breathtakingly impossible to comprehend and think that we would be here and the blows would come as fast as they did. And so, again, going back to what I said, I'm not surprised. I will say, because I was asked the question recently, that the speed of it has been a little surprising. And so really looking at it from a California lens to the national lens, we're the vanguard now in California, because California has the 5th largest Black population in the nation outside of the South. So where the political power of the South is basically been gerrymandered, the power base in California has to be held. So I'm gonna lead with us here in that sense. And we, are up against, we have our primaries and our generals. So what it looks like for us in Black women, we have had three, but we have 3 Black women in Congress right now that we have to defend. Just to have that power in Congress, to have that voice in Congress, very seasoned women in that sense. And we have been the leaders in this struggle for decades. And it's to continue that. I think one of the lessons that I hope we've all learned in this is that the most important thing you can do is vote. Be educated about it, which is where I think the Black press is so important now more than ever. Media, social media, Black church, our centers that we have always had that have been our vanguard in this moment, where Black women are so much in leadership in our churches. That's where I feel like we have to look to in this moment, because it's where we congregate, it's where we talk, is where we find refuge and love for one another. And I think it is the simplicity of our community in this moment, and it is in Black women are really in the center in all of those spaces. But I would say definitely for us in California, we have to not take for granted what we don't necessarily experience in the South per se, but here in California is just designed, it looks differently. It's the same thing. And so we have to fight just as hard as they're doing in Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. And we are the descendants of the Jim Crow. All of us here have families from Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi, all of that. So we're not disconnected at all from what's happening there. And we're gonna have to figure out ways to protect what we have here and really fight even harder for. And it's exhausting, but I will say there's been so many things really, probably since Obama was president, that have been in play for some time, and we're just having to pick it up. And we do have to anticipate versus being on the defense. So I'm really curious about what does that look like right now for us to get ahead? And the playbook, the long playbook that is always played is they already know what they want to do by 2030. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, where do we want to be in 2040?
So true, so true. For Kouture, as NAN Western Regional Assistant Director, what are you seeing in terms of how Black women are organizing, resisting, and leading through this backlash?
Well, I think I want to speak first. I do NAN as the Assistant Western Regional Director, but I own a business. I own 2 businesses, a snack manufacturing company as well as a public affairs agency. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that the way we're organizing is we're getting ownership. You cannot organize what you don't own. That's men and women. You cannot continue to ask for a seat at the table when you bring nothing to the table. You will only be respected by what you have to offer. Relationships are transactional. Advancement is transactional. And so the first thing we have to do is we have to look at, what do we have ownership in? Do we have our churches? Do we have our businesses? Do we have Black-owned media and publications? It's a lot easier to tell our stories in our own press than for us to ask for access into their press and their media. To have our own media outlets like Dr. Roland Martin, or with Roland Martin Unfiltered. It's a lot easier for us to advocate for our issues when we have people in politics that are legislators, senators, representatives, or other government officials. So I think the first question that would have to be answered, men and women, is what do you bring to the table? And do you have something at that table that someone wants? And then from there, we're able to organize. And organize is, how do I create something that one of these other ladies or someone else can utilize to be able to help advance the direction of our people? So I think, asking ourselves those questions, do we have something? Do we have something valuable? And then asking the why. Why are we there? Why do we want a seat at the table? We understand in politics why, but for a lot of people, they got into politics for their name and their face. They weren't really about the advancement of any person.
Right.
We can see that in the administration right now. This
Right.
is for a small, select group of friends who will ruin the lives of 300 million people in this country for 1%. So they set their agenda back, 15, 20 years ago. Or as the pastor said this morning, when they voted for Barack Obama, they had an agenda and a plan for a select few. So we have to also figure out what our why is. And then within that, we can take the conversation a step further in organizing.
Thank you, thank you. So true. Yeah, the clap goes right there. For Sister Delilah, as a partner at Barros, Clay and Associates, what should Black women know about navigating rooms where their talent is needed, but their power may still be resisted?
Thank you for that question. And I'll just give a little bit of context. So I'm an attorney and a lobbyist. I have a firm here in Sacramento along with my business partner, another Black woman, Barros, Clay and Associates. We operate on a little bit of everything in Sacramento: energy, healthcare, technology issues, things of that nature. Went to law school. I practiced at a big firm. So just in terms of context for that question, I've been in a lot of really interesting rooms and in a lot of places and spaces where I'm the only one. And so, it has been a part of my journey to figure out kind of how to navigate those spaces. I think one of the first things that I would say about walking into places that feel a little hostile is that you have to walk in with as much confidence as you can. And so that is being grounded in who you are, what your skills, talents, and abilities are, and what you bring to the table, and feeling confident about what that is. If that means you're doing affirmations in the morning, or you're hitting the gym, or whatever it is to help you center yourself, it's really important that we all have our own sort of personal practice to stay grounded in who we are before we walk into any room. Secondly, I would say what's really important in rooms like that is to develop friends, allies, and emissaries. You can't do anything by yourself. It is very important that you, when you're walking into a new job or you're starting a business or whatever it is that you're doing, that you survey the field. You have to understand kind of where the power is, where are the fault lines, who are people that might be potential allies for you, and go and build those relationships. Go and have coffee with so-and-so. I had a good working relationship with them. I like the way she communicates. So go sit down, have a conversation, develop those relationships because, and in developing those relationships, those shouldn't just be with Black people because what you need are people that are gonna be in rooms that you are not in that can continue to say positive things about you when you're not around. And so you got to get strategic to what Kouture was saying about, relationships being transactional. A lot of them are. I still think that it's really important to try and build authentic relationships, not just because somebody has power, am I going to be in their face, but because we have something in common. There's something that I can actually build a real relationship with you is definitely a stronger bond than just sort of those transactional ones, but you got to have a little bit of both. And then the last thing that I would say is, and I think for all of us here would probably agree, we find ourselves in these spaces. We might be one of the only ones or only a few. It's important that we don't hide who we are, our perspective, our Blackness from whatever conversation it is. So you might be in a Fortune 500 company and they're talking about an ad campaign and they're doing X, Y, and Z. You're looking at the thing and it's like, there are no people of color in this ad campaign. That is for you to be the one to say, hey, we got to think about this differently. Sometimes you have to help save people from themselves. And so it's really important for all of us when we're in these rooms to really think about, again, grounding ourselves, remember what we bring to the table, and then don't be afraid to stand up and say a thing, build your allies, and help them, get them to help you also move those messages as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Sister Betty, as president of National African American Civil Rights Organization, how does this moment compare to previous attacks on Black advancement and civil rights, and what lessons should guide us now?
Thank you for the question. Previous attacks, I think that it's not a lot of difference, except back then we were afraid of individuals with white hoods and white gowns. Now the power has switched to a different black gown, that they are at the Supreme Court level. And so now we have to look at things differently. And so being part of the National African American Civil Rights, African American was purposely because we want to be intentional of who we are speaking for, Black people. I get so tired of being in rooms where we're saying people of color to make everybody else feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But in their rooms, they have no problem in saying, this is my culture, this is my race, but we have to be polite, so no longer being polite. Also, understanding the economics of what's going on. We understand that slavery was economics. We understand as we went through and still going through the civil rights era, it was important to have a seat in the front of the bus. But what we're looking at now is owning the bus. And so it's no longer just having a seat, it's talking about ownership. And when I look at the robes again, what we're doing, our initials, we call ourselves NACRO, the New Negro. But anyway, NACRO, one of the things that we're doing is looking at the judges because they are on ballots that we don't have any information on. And yet we are asked to vote for them when they come through the mail. Most of the times they are running unopposed, but not all the time. So one of the things that we'll be starting this summer is something called Court Watch. And so where we're going to have our community go into the courts and watch. And just recently, LA Defense reached out to us, who wants to partner, because they're doing something with report cards on judges. And so they want to partner with our Sacramento area to do report cards in Northern California. So when it comes time for the ballot, we'll have a report card for those judges because of what just recently happened with the Supreme Court. We need to start looking at that more intentionally in order to make changes. And then we need to also understand our economic power. We as Black people spend the most when it comes to disposable cash than any other group. It said that this year, 2026 going into 2027, we spend 1.7 trillion with a T dollars on our disposable income. And so we need to know how, I'm going back to the word pivot, how to pivot that power, because that is economic power, to our good. And so with that, it's a couple of things. So maybe we want to look at what are the top 3 things that we pay for when we're talking about disposable. Black women, when I researched it, it was hair, it was nails, and it was fragrances and healthcare. So when we're looking at that, let's look at where that money is going. We are spending all that money to them. What type of money are they bringing back to our communities? So we need to start looking at things differently as we are dealing with this new racism, or a redefined racism, because it's always been there. And maybe not give as much. And to some of the ladies' points, we need to have our own. And instead of necessarily pouring our income into that, and we need to look at, if we are giving all of our money to a certain industry, is that industry giving their money to someone we would probably not vote for? And so we need to look at those economic challenges and maybe pull our money away, especially if we're giving them money to actually help support our enemies. And so that's what we're looking at when it comes to being intentional, being in the room, making sure that our economics are intact, and then teach our people, our Black people, maybe those things that we are using for economic engagement, we need to invest more in the stock market. We don't know enough about it. We need to be better teachers of our community. And last but not least, I do believe in working with the churches at BYOB, and it doesn't mean what you think. And so it means bring your own ballot. And so what that simply means, we bring our congregations and the people in the room that talks about the pros and cons of what's on the ballot. A lot of the times, our folks don't know the difference between a yes and a no. And so we need to educate them, everyone come into that room, educate them of what they are voting on, because it may reflect on their homes, their children's, their education, everything we're talking about. And then, because I witnessed that in other cultures, where the Hmong community room was filled, everybody brought in their ballots, they educated them, and they collected them, and they voted in bulk. And we are right now, we are looking at each other. We may call, people call me, Betty, who is this, or what is it? We need to be better stewards of educating our community on what to vote for and understanding what those ballots mean.
That is so true, and just to piggyback on what you said, yes, give her a hand. Oftentimes, the way the wording is on some of those ballots, yes means no and no means yes. But if you're not informed, what you think you're voting for, you're actually voting against. So I think that BYOB needs to be instituted, and it needs to be instituted quicker than quick. So thank you for that. General question, anyone can chime in on this one. Why do you believe Black women's progress so often produces backlash? And what is it about Black women's leadership that some systems seem to fear?
Just to be really blunt, I feel like Black women are not afraid of white men. I mean, we're not afraid of a lot of things, maybe some bugs, some little, things that give us the creeps, but like in a room with them, not at all. And I think that is part of the, the patriarchy and the misogyny of American racism and white supremacy is to bully everyone into submission. And so, where you started with the facts of the most educated, we're that because we are not afraid to speak for ourselves, to advocate, and then to bring others along. And I think that is where it is they really have to put us back in our place in order for the one person or the one group that will go in that room just fearless. What do we have to lose?
I'll piggyback on that because I think the patriarchy point is really important. Black women tend to operate in a way that is very different from the traditional patriarchy, which is the man and you do what I say and very hierarchical. We tend to be more community-oriented. We tend to be more spiritually grounded. We tend to be very strategic about the way that we go about doing things, and that, because that is different than the way that the traditional power structure operates, it is a threat. And so, and that threat can be, because patriarchy exists in Black communities too. And so the question is, how do we have to continue to find ways to shine, but also bring our brothers with us, bring other communities with us, so that we can think about other ways of organizing that are different than, the traditional structure that tries to tell us that, this is a dog-eat-dog world, and if you advance, then that means I go down. It doesn't have to be like that, right? There's enough pie for everybody if we operate in a certain sort of way, but that requires us to continue building community and building these relationships. But it is definitely a threat.
I agree with what you both said, and one of the things that I'm learning in my doctoral program, my research actually is really centered around the lived experience of an African-American executive, right? What was her journey to executive leadership? And what I've come to understand and come to learn is that sponsorship and mentorship will get them there, right? It's few of us that sit in those seats, and we have just extremely destroyed the market. White men are very scared of us, middle-level managers or lower-level managers, or even the executives, and so they work very hard to keep us boxed in this little corner. But that's not the reality, and that's not life moving forward. But one of the things I would like to encourage us to do moving forward is to just bring somebody with us. I live by this simple principle. It says, leave the window open and the ladder down. So no matter where I go, no matter how far I go, how high I go, somebody behind me can always come alongside and move as I move. So I think that sponsorship and mentorship is what is going to be the catalyst to propel Black women forward.
Thank you for that. Yes. How do we move from simply celebrating Black girl magic to actually building, protecting, and funding Black women's power?
I think at this moment in time, we have to get very serious about moving from inspiration, aspiration, motivation. We have to put some systems, infrastructure, processes in place. No longer are we doing it off of a whim. We cannot treat the movement like it's a hobby or a passion project, or just something that we get excited and motivated about when we go to a rally or a special event or a festival. We have to become very intentional about building something. And so we need to begin to ask ourselves, from the point that I made earlier, one, what are we building? And are we building something that is sustainable? Is this something that can be profitable? Is it something that can be impactful? Is it something that can have a succession plan? Is it something that leaves a legacy? And when we get really serious about that, whether you're a man or a woman, when we get really serious about creating something, we take the magic out of it and we make it something that's real. And I think one of the problems that we're facing right now as a culture and as a community is that we live off of that Black magic. We live off of the stories of our ancestors, and it's almost like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You know, it's like we have these very mythological, you know, aspirational goals, and we go, well, they did it back with, you know, Hidden Figures, and they did it back with the Little Rock Nine, and we don't really sit down and really look at what they actually had to do. You know, when you go back and you look at the bus boycott, that was 183 days of intentional action. We complaining about not wanting to go into Target, and we're still shopping on Amazon. We have too many things in our house as it is, and we need to really clean some stuff out and give it away. These people had no cars. They had one income. They were domestic servants, a lot of people, indentured servants, if we really want to get technical. And they went 183 days under the oppression of a system that did not acknowledge them. And we're upset because we don't have a sponsor for our festival, and we don't have somebody that's out here that'll support us, you know, going in the store and saying, I don't see a sign that looks like me. Who cares? You don't see other communities ever saying, you don't see us in TV, or you don't see us on billboards, or they don't make anything, because they own a system and they have an infrastructure in place to the point that they have communities named after them. Thai Town, Chinatown. What do we have? What is it called in Los Angeles? It's now called West Hollywood. It's called Rainbow City. You know, because they've created an infrastructure to say that they have such economic impact that we're going to name them and give them naming rights. And we're upset because we don't have someone that's going to give us sponsorship dollars. We got to correct this. We need to take the magic out of it, and we need to get real, and we need to get practical. Do we have something that is sustainable in this market? Can we make money off of it, as to Ms. Betty's point, that we can then turn around and reinvest it in other systems like media, like politics, like law, like finance? If we don't build that infrastructure and have some order and some consistency in our lives and discipline where our money is going and how we're investing it, we're going to keep it in the world of magic, and it'll never be practical and obtainable.
So true. How can men, especially Black men, be stronger partners in protecting, supporting, and following Black women's leadership?
You know, one of the things Malcolm X said in 1962, as far as what Black women, we are the most disrespected women in the world. But he followed that statement, he said a little bit more than that, but he followed that statement on what do we do about it, and he followed it by saying Black men need to support the Black women when they are disrespected. and not be ashamed and or afraid to do so. But the same thing also goes to Black women supporting the Black men when they're at the table and where they're pushing them. And so we need to, I think one of the sisters said here that we can't do it by ourselves. And so we need to be more of a collective voice and speak in one voice. There's power when you are speaking in one voice. If you're walking by yourself, it's just a walk. But when you're walking collectively, you're walking in power. And so when you're talking about economic venues being named after them, and here in Sacramento, we have Little Saigon. And so we don't have, if you even mention that we want to say Little Africa, it's a major issue in Sacramento, and we are the capital. And so in per capita, as far as African Americans are concerned, we actually have more than on a national level. And so we do have a voice. And so we need to learn how to teach more, be more strategic, intentional. When I hear about the VRA, the Voting Rights Act, being stripped, and me and Dr. Porter was at the press conference where we heard the gentleman from Tennessee, Justin, say, what does this mean in Tennessee? What it means is that now with the new maps, a person that could go a block or two to vote, now they may have to travel an hour or two to vote. And so that's the gerrymandering that we're looking at. But if we're strategically, we shouldn't just be saying we're disgusted, we're mad, this is not right. We need to have a plan. After we say all of that, we need to have a plan. And to me, I think the plan should be it's too big to rig. And too big to rig means that we have mobilization of individuals putting on buses, putting on vans, driving them to those polls that's an hour or two away, and even encouraging even more people to vote, and nothing changes. It reflects, but we need to stop being so emotional about it and have a plan. It's okay to be emotional, but do it with a plan. And so if we know it's going to take 2 hours in the South to go vote with this new map, then what's the plan? Just not say, oh my God. There has to be a plan, and we need to be more part of teaching and creating and implementing a plan so that we can be better.
So true. I'll just jump in really quickly to sort of piggyback on this question about Black men and Black women. I think there's so much, especially if you're on social media, so much of this vitriol between the two groups, right? And it first of all, it doesn't have to be like that. But secondly, I think, the important thing, what most women will say is, I want partnership. I don't want you lording over me. I don't want to lord over you. We want to work together with our brothers. We want to be in partnership with them. We want to be able to have open and honest and vulnerable conversations with men, and for them to be willing to have those with us too. And so I think, we talked about the patriarchy and sort of that overarching kind of system that's in play at all times. I think the more that men can have conversations, primarily, honestly, amongst themselves, where they're building real relationships with each other, where they're having spaces where they can be vulnerable and honest with one another, it creates better opportunity for us to engage with each other as well.
I'm going to say this then, since we're here. To both of their points, I think first we have to take the emotion out of this. Times is too tough right now. I don't care what a man feels, thinks, and I'm pretty sure he don't care what I feel or think when we're under an attack that we're under right now. Everybody needs to get in position, get a lane, and work it. You can mama rub me and tell me how great I am when all of this is over with. But right now, I'm not going to go to a man and go, I wish that you would empower me. I wish that you would encourage me. Tell me that I'm great and our voters' rights are being taken away. I need to know, do you believe in the movement? If I drown, you're going to drown. If they kill me, they're going to kill you next. And we need to be saying that to each other and keep the main thing the main thing. And you're right. Social media and a lot of the media, period, is very divisive right now because they want to distract us. And we was over here popping red balloons. Now we over here talking about why men and women don't like each other and don't trust each other. And the whole time, to the patriarchy point, I can give another perspective. I have never had a problem with a white man. All of my bosses have been white. I've never worked for a black person in my entire life. I never had a black school teacher. I never had a black doctor, dentist, or anything until my life. So my entire life has been around white people. And let me tell you, it's not the men, it's the hand that rocks the cradle that rules the world. And what happened was when I was in a lot of those spaces, they had us as their EAs, their senior vice presidents, their COOs. We look at Melody Hobson. We look at Valerie Jarrett. We look at Desiree Rogers. We look at Ursula Phillips. There's many. We look at Michelle Obama. That was the president of the University Hospital. They were fine with us. It was the hand that rocked the cradle that said, don't put Kamala Harris in office. Because if you put Kamala Harris in office and the women like her are marrying our husbands, like Venus Williams, like Serena Williams, like Melody Hobson. When they started seeing the upward trajectory that we were gonna make, they went back to their husbands and said, you better not do that. You better, because they've been scared of that since 1619. That's why my family got blue eyes and green eyes and yellow eyes, because there was a lot more going on down in New Orleans, you know, than the master working the table. And so if we really think about who's the hand behind all of this, we can then put it back in perspective and say these are tactics to divide and distract us. And we need to stay focused on right now, relational issues is not our issue. The only issue right now is progress, and progress is through voting and through economic development. We can go back and build our families. The Bible says that the money is the answer of all things. Once we get the infrastructure in place, our families can get back in place. We can talk about mental health and counseling and restoring our neighborhood and our communities when we can get our economics and our politics in place to support those supporting services. So I think we need to just remind men and women, let's not get pulled into that right now. Be mature, yes. Get the help that you need. Go get among men and women, because we say a lot about the brothers, but we got a lot going on with ourselves too. We don't bring them roses and daisies, you know. But everybody needs to get in their group, and we need to grow up, and we need to be more mature, and we need to be more serious-minded now, and keep the main thing the main thing.
So true. What role must black churches, civil rights organizations, media, political institutions, and business leaders play in defending black women before the attacks come?
Well, I think they play a very important role, and I think we've kind of touched on the infrastructure. And I would say, you know, just want to just touch in, this is the time that our organizations be stronger than ever. So when we're talking about money, for someone who's worked in the nonprofit sector my entire adult career and watch and know how money moves in those areas, we have to have organizations that pay people full time to do this work. No more volunteer, all of that, none of that. The ACLU, nobody works for free over there. Nobody works for free for other civil rights organizations but ours. We need to stop all that and hire people and build that infrastructure, because you can't fight anybody when you have to have a job over here and then you got to show up for somebody whose kids just got shot in the streets. We have to stop all that. So I think more importantly, which then brings our dollars more centered to that work, and then you have consistency. And I think one of the things that's so important is to have that consistency, so you have those people in those roles who can really do that battling. I think the black church is so important, and I hope that we can really get back to that community center. And so many of our communities that are being gentrified, the only building left standing is the black church. And so how do we, like what you're saying, how do we go back and get that property? Maybe churches, you got a couple acres, maybe you need to parcel those off and sell some, housing or something. I mean, we can look at it as a much bigger picture so we can stay centered, because this gerrymandering, just like desegregation, has pushed us out of our area where we can concentrate wealth. The other groups have concentrated wealth because they live together. They have, we can talk about a lot of the resources that especially refugees get, that they can pool in 6 months and buy a business. We've never had that opportunity. So sometimes I know we're hard on ourselves because our hill is not theirs. And so we can't compare their success to ours because they haven't lived in America the way we have. And so that, that to me is important. And so these entities that that need to defend, when you defend the Black woman, you defend the Black family. I believe that we really need to make sure that they have the infrastructure to fight. You can't do that with a budget under $100,000 and two volunteers. You just can't.
I just want to add to that, something real simple. We all need to come together in one voice. I'm tired of 52 MLK marches on each side of the town. Juneteenth, we got 50,000 Juneteenths. I'm like, my God, can we come together? Churches, Black media, civil rights organization. You know how powerful those marches would be if we had just one MLK? If we just had one huge Juneteenth? Part of our own demise is that we can't or won't, or we're crabs in the barrel, we won't come together in one voice, and that's what destroys or can destroy our momentum, our power. And so something as simple as coming together in one voice for the things that we believe in, Juneteenth and MLK, those two alone, I'm almost feeling like, can't we just all get along? But that's something that I think that we need to start with.
So true.
I just want to jump in really quickly, and I don't have the answer to this question, but I want to note that we got to reach the young people too. And there's a whole generation of folks that grew up on phones and grew up on social media, and they don't necessarily show up at church. They're not necessarily going to the Juneteenth march. We have to be really strategic, I think, and think about how to reach our young people, both to educate them, to make sure that they feel a part of the community, and that they recognize that they have a role to play. When you think about the civil rights movement and who was in the streets doing a lot of the work, young people have an important role to play. And so we have to be thoughtful about how we reach them, how we bring them back into the fold, and help them achieve what the next thing is going to be for us, because they're going to be an important piece of that.
So true. What is one action every person in this room can take to protect, invest in, and elevate Black women's leadership?
I would say intentionality. I think that's been like the common theme on this panel today, being intentional about opening doors, lifting up names of Black women who are qualified in rooms that they're not, supporting Black-led, women-led businesses, campaigns, organizations. And I know as a publisher, one of the things we do is highlight African-American women, well, Black folks in general, but we really lean into our sisters that are out there on the main line doing the work, whether it be through mental health advocacy or health care, the crisis there, Black business, opening a business, maintaining businesses. There are just a myriad of ways that I believe we can support African women to keep them at the top of mind for opportunities to come. And then just to say about the kids, I do think that pulling kids in and kind of volunteering them that they're going to do things. At our office, we host parties, and I volunteer my daughter all the time. You're going to serve this food, and you're going to bring your friends to do that. But with that comes a little check. Children are, unfortunately, today's children are moved by money. So yeah, we can educate them, we can mobilize them, we can encourage and engage them. But at the end of that, there's still that question, what's in it for me? So that was my 2 cents.
Just be more supportive of each other. You don't necessarily have to have money, but you have time, you have energy, you have a listening ear to women and to the young people. Make sure that we're open to that. People who know me know I love taking the train everywhere. And so recently I took the train, and there's 2 young brothers. Well, one was Hispanic, one was Black, and they were on their phones. And so I decided to engage, and come to find out one was 21, one was 28. And the 21-year-old was getting ready to buy his first home in San Francisco, which is not cheap. And I'm trying to figure out how you do that. And so, but they were so intense of showing me their media straight. They had over 1 million people following them. And so sponsors were dropping money, and they were making somewhere between 20 and 50,000 a month. And so I asked the question, I said, well, you could use this platform for young people voting. And it's like, oh, no, we can't do that. That would mess up our money. And so I said, what conversation could I have with you to make that better? And he says, well, just talking to her, I didn't think, he said, I thought you, and he said, no disrespect, as an older woman, I thought you were afraid of me being a young black man. So the fact that you spoke to me meant a lot. And so we exchanged numbers, because at the end I said, well, how can a grandmother make that kind of money? I was just trying to figure that out. But the fact that we need to engage more and support each other more, and to see those two brothers make that kind of money and have that, I mean, millions of followers. And until the moment we got back to Sacramento, they were showing me their hits, and it were all clean. It was all clean hits, but we need to start engaging more into what social media could do for us, not necessarily financially, but to have, between those two, they had over 1 million each as far as viewers are concerned, and have actually helped economically some of the small businesses that were struggling, that flipped them just by them being on the social media. And so let's have more of those conversations of support and learning each other and what we can do collectively.
So true. What should black women stop apologizing for in this season?
I think, because Betty said it, and I was like, yeah, everything. What are we apologizing for? For what? You know, I think you said it earlier, what do we have to lose? We're in a moment right now where, you know, it's all hands on deck, it's a 4-alarm fire, it's all of those things. So we don't really have a lot of time to be, you know, tiptoeing around stuff, people, right? I think we have to be, again, because you have to build coalition, you have to build relationships, you have to do that work, you have to do it in a way that's smart and that's gonna bring people in as opposed to repel them. You know, there's a lot of work to be done. And you just kind of have to, we all have to like roll up our sleeves and be willing to jump in there and do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to apologize for to anybody anywhere.
I don't care. I think, I guess if we had to put a name on it, I think what happens is that a lot of people consider intentionality as being intense. And so because we're very focused, and I can tell by the panel, you know, this is I don't want to say type A, but type A, boss babe, you know, we're entrepreneurs, we're leaders, we're decision makers. We know what we want. We can see, we have vision. And I think a lot of times if you don't have vision, you don't know what your purpose is. You're dazed and confused. You look at me and you're like, oh, she's too intense. She's too much. She's extra, or some of those other things. And it's like, no, we're very focused and we're very intentional. You know, I go to a lot of places and I am deemed a little bit more serious-minded than most, but I know I have 27 employees, and 40% of my employees are single moms, reentry, homeless veterans that work for me that could not get a job in the mainstream marketplace. I can't be playing around with y'all. I got people's lives, rent, mortgages, children's education, daycare that's on the line. And you think I'm about to be up here popping fans and line dancing with y'all? No, I'm very serious in this hour. Do I love to have a good time? Yes, I do. I'm divorced. I've been divorced a long time. You know, maybe I should date. Maybe I'd be a lot more relaxed, you know, but not so intense. But I'm busy. I have a lot going on. And so I'm very intentional. Yeah, it's just all over the place, you know. I need to drink some water and go lay down, you know. But the fact of the matter is that I can see so clearly the importance and the time that we're in. And I mean, a lot of people look at this as negative. Like they say, this is a negative moment. We're under attack. This is the greatest opportunity that we have ever had, ever. And people can't see it because it's new. And anything that's new, for those of us on the panel who are mothers, you know, it's scary when you're getting ready to give birth to your first child. You don't know there's no manual. No one tells you anything. But anything that's new is going to be scary. So when you see AI, you see the changing in the political landscape, I look at a lot of things like with our young people, we were talking about that. We don't talk enough about that. We're dealing with the generation who don't even have borders anymore. We knew everything by the 5-mile radius of our community. It was our church, our school, our family, and maybe our little social clubs. I was in New York with my children and for National Convention, and I went and met 3 people that they had met in a video game, a social media platform like Discord, and then something that they all competed in this digital contest. They had made friends with people from all over the world, and they were like, oh yeah, we're in New York too, come visit us. And I'm like, no, you're not going to go see these people, you don't. And they're like, what are you talking about? We've been friends since the pandemic. We had become friends in the Discord app or through social media. So when we're coming and we're talking about Black issues, it's so much bigger in their world because their friends are in London or they're in Thailand or they're in Dubai. And so we have to kind of reframe the conversation that what we're dealing with on our levels and some structural systems that's been in place for a number of years may not be the same thing that these young gentlemen are dealing with or her daughter is dealing with on a day-to-day basis when they're interfacing with the internet or their friends in school or other things. So I think we have to really not care about what people think or say or how we're amplified. We do have to be true to ourselves. You cannot lie to yourself about yourself. But we do have to get to the place where we don't become intimidated by what people feel or think about our intentionality. If it's intense to them, too bad. We're not for everybody. We just may be that secret serum that's for a small group of people who can handle that dosage. But really stay focused on and keep our eyes on the prize and don't get pulled into what we are to people who might not even matter in the long run.
That's true. So in closing, in one sentence, and I want each of you to answer this question. In one sentence, what charge would you leave for our Black young women who are rising, leading, and refusing to be pushed back in this hour? What one sentence would you leave for our Black young women who are rising, leading, and refusing to be pushed back?
I'm going to say trust yourself. There's inherent power in all of you, and you just have to believe that. You have to hone that. You have to hone your skills. You got to trust your instincts. Trust yourself.
I would probably add to that, keep balance in your life. It's hard out there doing this work, so remember to invest in you and balance everything that you do.
Just to add to that, so we're going to trust ourselves, we're going to have balance, and then we're going to give ourselves grace. Grace.
I would say with all of that, in this moment, dream big, really big, because this is a moment. Often, we say this is a moment, and this is an opportunity in ways that some people can't see. And if, believe in yourself, have that rest, take that grace, but think big.
Hey?
And I think after you've done all of that, build something. Build something that no one can take away from you. Build something that you would be proud of. Build something that your children and your family can rely on. And no one can take anything away from you when you have the table, when you are the table, when you put food on the table, when you own the furniture store with a whole bunch of other tables inside of it. build something. And when you build something and you see the strength and the grit and the wisdom that comes out of that, it'll be so much easier to trust yourself and to keep that balance and to give yourself grace and to keep dreaming bigger and greater, because you know if you did it before, you can do it again.
And I would like to say, to add to that, be your true, authentic self. Don't let anyone take away you and who you are. Don't try to be, a cheap copy, but be your great original self. And with that, we'd like to thank everyone. Let's give a hand to our panelists. Thank you all for such an amazing day on today. And we're going to prepare to have Dr. Porter come up and close us out, but we're going to take a picture first. And again, thank you all for coming. Dr. Porter.
Put on some picture-taking music. Crazy, yeah. Oh, yeah, he was in Cambridge. Oh, yeah. That's wonderful. Did he like Cambridge? Oh, he loved it, yeah. All right, well, so we're closing out. Thank you so much for coming on today. This closes our day session. Tonight, we're flipping it for the gala. All right, we're honoring our great honorees. It's great food. We're flipping this table out, this situation out. We still have a few seats left, but you're more than welcome to come. Can we thank my staff for all they're doing in the background and making things happen, our media, our facilities, and all that. It was wonderful. Spread the word. This will be up on live stream. You can share it through our Facebook page at SAC Genesis. Thanks to all of our participants. We'll see you soon, all right? Tonight it starts. There's a reception at 5:30. 7 o'clock p.m. is our game.